I knew that, um, yes, being an imperfect mom is something, but also just all my imperfections made me the person that I am, not just as a mom, but as an educator and as a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as all of those things. Feel, affirm, reset, or to go far, or the FAR method, really means just that: identifying your feelings, identifying what feelings you actually have, and diving into the root and the core of those feelings. Extreme pain, and she's over exaggerating, to, oh, well, you don't look like you're in any pain. Brittni, you need to surrender to your feelings. And I'm like, what? What? Surrender? Me? What?
Welcome to Baby Bump and Business, the podcast for creative moms growing a baby and a brand at the same time. I'm your host, Bee Trofort-Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom, sharing the real unfiltered journey of pregnancy, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Each week, I'll be joined by a fellow creative mom to talk about the beauty, the burnout, and the balance of it all. So let's get into it. Today's guest is Brittni Johnson. With over 10 years of experience in education, she's passionate about creating transformative learning environments that inspire and empower individuals, teams, and leaders to reach their full potential. As a change agent educator and a mental health advocate, she is committed to helping people recognize and grow their skills and knowledge needed to succeed in today's ever-changing world. On top of that, she's a wife, she's a mother, and she's my twin sister. Hey, Brittni!
Hey.
So let's get right into it. How did your business start going through motherhood?
Well, I think my business started because of motherhood. And I started in education. That already in itself is one thing, but within education, within climbing my career or my education ladder, I became a mom. And there were a lot of things that I had to think about that I didn't think about before. And there were a lot of things that I was going through physically and mentally that inspired my motherhood. But then there was a space where I was like, is there someone that's going to talk about it? At the time, with my first our first child in 2018, it was not really a topic. People were talking about it, but in a general sense. And then there was the layer of being a Black woman, and what it means to go through motherhood, but go through postpartum, and postpartum depression, anxiety, PTSD. And once that happened, I was like, well, as an educator, I got to talk about it. I got to teach people about it. I got to tell people about it. And that really inspired Imperfect Mom. It started as Imperfect Mom, which I think was just, just the idea of being a first mom and like embracing that. And it worked for a while, but after a while, I was like, motherhood isn't the only part of me. And a lot of who I am and my experience inspires and actually transforms my motherhood. And so I knew that, um, yes, being an imperfect mom is something, but also just all my imperfections made me the person that I am, not just as a mom, but as an educator and as a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as all of those things. And so that really transpired from perfect mom to imperfectly Brittni, where I was able to go straight into like, what does it actually mean to use your imperfections to thrive, to strive, and to keep on going. And in order for me to do that, I had to like think about, what am I doing every single day? And building a framework was just that. And that's what really transformed everything. Just thinking about, what do I have to do every single day? Affirmations was one of those things that people talked about, and it was just something that I just didn't connect to. And I had to stop and be like, hey, how do I make this work for me? And a lot of people just wanted to jump straight into affirmations, but I think that there's a layer to that. Like, you have to figure out what's going on with you. What are the things that make you express yourself in a certain way? before you can say, here's what I affirm about myself too. So all that to say that like my motherhood or becoming a mother really like put a fire under me to say like, actually there's a lot of things that make me who I am. And there's a lot of things that I want to be able to have my children do, but also there make a community of it. And like there's other people who are doing the same thing. There's other people who are finding the skills that they need and or searching for the skills that they have to make themselves better. And that's essentially where Imperfect Mom to Imperfectly Brittni came. And through that is our trademark pending framework, the F.A.R method. Feel, affirm, reset.
Mm. Now, talking about the feel affirm set, I think one thing that, I mean, obviously, I know you personally, so I know a little bit more, but can you dive into what those three frameworks mean? Like, what does it mean to feel? What does it mean to affirm? And what does it mean to reset?
Yeah. So feel, affirm, reset, or to go far, or the F.A.R method, really means just that: identifying your feelings, identifying what feelings you actually have, and diving into the root and the core of those feelings. Usually we are thinking about like just the top 5 feelings that we can think about: happy, sad, angry. But what are those feelings really? Are you really angry, or did you feel betrayed? And those feelings actually determine what you might want to do next, or how it impacted you. And so understanding or having that emotional intellect is so important. And so that's why we start with feel. And once we are able to identify the feelings that are impacting us, the way that we express those feelings, then we can say, here's what I know to be true. That's the affirmation. Here's what I know to be true always. Yes, I felt betrayed by that moment, but I also know that here's who I stand as a person. Here's who I also know that I'm enough. And adding those two together is what makes it go far into our reset. So now that we have our feeling, we know that we were probably betrayed. I'm just using that because we were here already. And then we have our affirmation that I am enough. I'm more than enough. And then our reset. So what do we know? What does that mean? Who did we feel betrayed by? Does that mean that we need to take a step back from this situation? Does that mean that we need to take a step back from this person? Or maybe it needs to be, maybe it needs to mean to step back and rest and think about like what you need to do. And so feel, affirm, reset is taking those initiatives and taking those steps and those principles and putting them together so that you can move on with clarity and move on with alignment as it pertains to you, so that you can communicate with others, and you can communicate your skills to others.
Mm. So now, talking about being mothers and going into motherhood, obviously you were basically my doula, right? You were my doula, but you were someone that also you're an advocate, like, and you've taught me how to advocate for myself, especially going through this process of being a first time mom, and but also knowing all the things that you have went through within like the medical field, and we're now seeing more and more apparent like how Black women are treated within the medical field. How can you one, do you mind sharing like that experience with your first child in DC, but then also how you can utilize the same go far method for other mothers who are hearing this or who are listening to this to help them understand how to advocate for themselves once they understand their feelings and how to affirm those feelings as well.
Yeah. So my first delivery is probably the reason why I didn't want to go through it again. I was living in DC at the time, and naturally you just think, oh, you're living in the capital of US, it's going to be great, you're going to find like the best doctors. And at the time I did find who I thought was really great doctor at George Washington University Hospital. But if you know anything in healthcare and anything with labor and delivery, you sometimes the doctor that you have is not the person that delivers your baby, especially if they're not on call. And so that's how it started for me. I really loved my doctor, but she was not on call the day that I knew that our baby was coming. So we went to the hospital. By that time, I knew that I was having contractions at the time that they had said, like, when you're 5 to 7, you have a contraction every 5 to 7 minutes for an hour or 2 hours or whatever the case was. Let them know. We let them know that we were on our way, etc. And then when we get to the hospital, they do their check. The first red flag was they didn't have a room for me. There was no room in the triage, so they put me in like the post delivery with someone else who had just had her baby, and the baby was already there. And so that was already like, okay, here we go. Then I had the doctors check me, and then they were like, okay, well, we're going to discharge you because, you're not ready. And the one thing that really stood out to me was when the lady was like, well, you don't really look like you're in a lot of pain. And my mom, our mom at the time, was like, how dare you say that? Like, you don't know her to know how she expresses herself when she is in pain. And so we were leaving, we had to leave, and we didn't even make it out of the front door before I was like, actually, something's got to give. Like, I'm in extreme pain, to the point where I'm like screaming now. And my husband was like, we're not leaving. We're not leaving until my wife is seen. And he went back up to the third floor, because at the time it was the third floor. He found the nicest nurse that he could find on that floor, and she brought us back up. And we were able to have our son. And even during the delivery, I remember being like, hitting the doctor at one point because they were forcing me to do something that I was not comfortable with. And that not only traumatized me, but also like made an impact for how I saw doctors moving forward and how I like wanted to be in that room. Like, I don't know what it got to a point where I don't know how I'm supposed to be into a office, right? And so it's from, oh, she's like extreme pain and she's over exaggerating, to, oh, well, you don't look like you're in any pain. And so that strife, that fine line that we have to cross as black women, is the hardest part, and it makes it traumatic for delivery. And I knew that going into having a baby the second time, and then my sister having a baby, that was something that I did not want to happen. And I knew that, like, from after having my first child, any other doctor appointment that I had, I was getting a lot of anxiety. And I needed to, so much anxiety that when I was in the doctor's office and they're asking me what's going on, I could not tell them because my anxiety would not allow me to tell them. And so that was one of the biggest factors that started the F.A.R framework, the Feel Affirm Reset framework, because I had to figure out what was my body doing. And so I wrote it down. I literally started with, like, how is my body feeling? How am I feeling mentally every single day for 30 days? And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it for 90 days because I want to make sure that I have enough information for these doctors. And usually every medication they gave us, they was like after 3 months. So for 90 days straight, I logged how I felt physically and what that actually looked like. So if I said I was feeling anxious, what did that look like and feel like in my body? And then once I was able to do that, I literally came to the doctor with my notebook that said, here's how I was feeling every single day. Here's what I like know to be true. So I know that, like, this pain, one, is not, that was an affirmation for me, and this pain is not normal, but like my life can be. And then the reset of, like, if I'm having pain every single day, what kind of rest do I need? What kind of reset do I need? Because the current situation is not working. And so having that log and just being really intentional about, like, here's what I'm feeling and here's what it looks like, made me even stronger in communicating to the doctors of, like, I know what you said before, and this is the facts. Here is the evidence that I have. So now that you have this evidence, what does this treatment look like now? And I've had doctors be like, okay, well, great. You've had all of these things. Let's try this treatment. And then I've had doctors be like, yeah, there's nothing else that I could do for you. And but I realized, like, just taking this time, even if it was 5 to 10 minutes out of my day to be like, "What is my body doing? How am I feeling today?" was so pivotal in not just the way that I communicated with the doctors, but now it's the way that I move, it's the way that I parent, it's the way that I consult, it's the way that I organize. I have to figure, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, like emotions, like nobody wants to talk about that." But when you think about it, a lot of what we do is driven by our emotions. And if we aren't thinking about what those emotions are actually telling us, we can be making decisions that are so far left than what we truly, really wanted.
Hmm. And so now even talking about that, you have helped me with this whole pregnancy. You were my advocate. You were if my husband wasn't at the doctor's, you were there. And you were usually the one that I checked with first. And that is like, okay, if she can't make it, you gotta come. But one thing that you did instill in me was your go far framework in terms of like what is your feeling, but also what do you want? And honestly, like being there for your first delivery was traumatizing and why I waited 7 years and why I could have waited probably 7 more, right? But, even thinking about that, like, you were the one that helped me come up with, my pregnant what's it called? The not your delivery plan,
Maternity plan. Yeah, your birth
maternity
plan.
plan, your birth plan, and even things like that, like, a lot of us don't know, like, that's something that you need, but you were actually very pivotal in making sure that I had one and had the right questions and what I needed to put in there and what I need to tell the doctors, especially knowing like that mindset of yes, you may have a daughter that goes through with your whole pregnancy, but when it comes time to delivery, the chances of that person being the person, the one that you've built that trust with, there's not a guarantee that they're going to be the person walking you through getting your child out. And I don't think a lot of people and I don't think a lot of people or women understand how frightening that is, right? Like that is very terrifying when it's like the person who's been holding your hand all 40 weeks and it's like, oh, actually, we're not the one that's helping you push out this baby. And it's going to be a stranger that doesn't know your medical history. It's going to be a stranger that doesn't have that bond with you or know anything. It's just someone reading a sheet of paper and you're hoping that they're going to treat you the way that you should be treated. And especially in this day and age, you're not guaranteed to be treated the way that you should be treated in something that is so life threatening and something that is so scary and traumatizing when you think about it. So
Yeah.
even thinking about that, how would you say that your Go Far method, I mean, I know what it's done for me, but how pivotal is it for women who are going through this to understand how important it is to have a birth plan and to have some type of way to advocate for yourself and to write down how you want to be advocated for when even if you cannot speak when you are in pain?
It's interesting because my birth plan with my first and my birth plan with my second were the same but different, because the birth plan with my first was an Excel spreadsheet, which everyone thought was crazy. And it had like everything from like, who to speak to. We have a big family, like who to speak to and at what point. Like if I'm having a C-section or an unpromptu C-section, who to tell and all of those things. And that was really important. But after I had my first child and going into my second plan, I realized actually it's not really about the aesthetics of the birth plans, because I would see a lot of birth plans of like, do you want a sense? Do you want like music? And that's all cool. Like I think it's important that you really understand what your environment looks like, but I also think it's important to understand what your body does and what you do. And so in the new revised birth plan that end up turning into like everybody wants it now is had all of that. It had like a very special area that was dedicated to my pain. And like, yes, there's a pain scale in the hospital room that has like pictures of 1 to 10. But as a Black woman, it may look different to you. So when I say that I'm fine, that's probably a 5. But if I say, "Oh," or a cuss word or whatever, know that, like, actually, I'm probably at an 8 or a 9, and we need to start doing some interventions or treatments or medication or whatever the case is. But it was really down to knowing that, like, what do I sound like when I'm in pain? What do I look like when I'm in pain? And understanding what that means for me. Because like I said, they would always be like, "Oh, well, you don't look like you're in pain." I would take my the PTSD scores or the postpartum scores, and they'd be like, "Your scores are so high, but you look so happy." It's like, exactly. And I think like that was my point, especially my OB, she would always tell, or she did tell me, she was like, you as my patient made me think about all of my patients differently, because you have migraine and I understood that you have migraine, but I didn't experience you having migraine until this pregnancy, and there was literally nothing that we could do, and you're like hunched over in our office, but every other day you're happy, you're like smiling, and you're all of these things. And when she said that, that's when I was like, yes, exactly. They're taught to see pain and see certain things a certain way. And I have always tried my best to say, like, I'm not always going to look like what I go through. And so because of that, here's all the work that I have done, and here's all the information that I know that can help you treat me. And so that's where like that birth plan was important. I also knew that like as a Black woman, we have a high mortality rate, especially as it comes to heart and blood and blood transfusions and all of that. And so I made sure that in my birth plan, I knew that I was high risk pregnancy. I knew that I was at risk for blood clots. And so I wrote in my blood plan, here's what mom is concerned about blood clots in legs. And the first thing that the nurse said to me was like, "Hey, I noticed that you have this in your birth plan. Would you like," I forgot what the machine is called, but you put the machine on your legs and it does the contractions on your legs, so to keep that blood flowing. And when she said that, I was like, "You read my birth plan?" She was like, "Yeah." And I gave it to the team and they read it too. And I was like, even in that moment, I knew that my delivery was going to be different. Just knowing that she read it, I was like, of course the delivery was the delivery. But like that was one less burden that I had, knowing that like I'm going to get taken care of because I have given them everything I know about taking care of me. And not only have I given it to them, I've assured that they have read it. They have also given me some check for understanding questions to understand that they have done it. And then they shared it with the team. And I think the most beautiful part of it all is like I was able to deliver my child with a room full of Black people or people of color. And I like to this day, I'm very, um, I think that's a full circle because of where I started and where we were able to land with that.
Mm. So, how have you been able to balance now that you have two children? You've been advocating, you've been learning so much more in this process. How have you been able to instill these same practices, not just at being a mother and helping mothers and helping people going through motherhood like me? Her services are only for me, sorry guys. But how have you been able to utilize those same skill sets within your business and managing your business and structuring your business?
It's interesting because not a lot of people know or can see. Like when you say the word feel, it's already like one of those things that like people just cringe about. Especially if you are like um an earth sign and you're like feelings, that's not what we do. But it's so interesting when I'm able to like peel the layers back and give a bird's eye view to people of like, actually, I've been doing this framework the entire time I've been with you. And so I love that because it really is an embodiment. And so like even when I'm working with my clients now, or like before they were just like educators and individual educators, now they're organizations with particular needs. And feedback is one of the best ways the F.A.R framework can live. And so when I'm working with my clients, it's okay, I noticed there was some tension in this meeting, or I noticed that these are the conversations that were happening in this meeting. I think we need to peel this back and understand exactly what everybody's feeling. Not like, are we sad about this or do we like, but what are we really, what's coming up that is making this a tension conversation versus a conversation that we can move with problem solving and critical skills. And so it's that. It's like even in the meeting, like, oh, I noticed that we did this, but here's what we did well. So moving forward, here's what we should do. It's that. It's like having a huge project be completed. So like having a conference that we just did, a client that I just did, they had an entire conference. And then after the conference, I gave them feedback of like, here's how everybody was feeling. And again, it sounds like what's feeling? Actually, what that looks like is here are the strengths from the workshops. Here's what people are saying about the speakers. Here's the like that they're credible, that they want more information. That all goes into feeling. But it also goes into our affirmations of like what went well. And then our reset is the same thing. It's what went well, but what do we do now? What do we learn? How do we move forward? How do we do this again? So it lives in just my work, but with my children, I think that they have the unfortunate skill of dealing with a mom that has chronic illness. And so, a lot of my first child, especially, a lot of his life was like, is mommy okay? Are you okay? And I think that the same thing I always say to them, like, as soon as they have any kind of emotion, if it's a tear, if it's a sad face, it's a happy face, are you okay? Are you good? And to the point where like they're asking, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you? In the beginning, they probably didn't know what it meant, but now they know that that's a question that I need to ask. And it's a question that I need to ask because I need to know how I move. If I know that mommy's not okay right now, maybe I shouldn't ask her if she should make me like spaghetti and meatballs or like if I need to like go outside and play. But um I think now it happens so often that like now my child's teacher is like, yeah, he actually advocates for himself often and he advocates for other kids as well. Like, oh, I noticed that this was wrong, or I noticed that this didn't happen. And don't let somebody be crying. My son is there. So there's a balance. There's like a lot of empathy. And there's like somewhere like, all right, you're still a child. And that's the thing too, just like understanding like where we are, like everybody's feelings, especially I have to tell my son, like everybody's feelings is not important to you right now. You're only 7. But it's important for you to understand how you're feeling so that you can communicate to your parents and we know what to do, how to help you, how to move forward.
Mm. So what would you say to, I feel like a lot of creatives and a lot of entrepreneurs, we don't really address our feelings. And I mean, I can speak for myself, I don't. And I'm one of those, like, if I'm feeling some type of way, I'm gonna bury myself in work. Like, and that's the way that I deal with anything. Like, if I'm mad, I'm at work because at least work ain't gonna talk back to me, you know? And it's like, or if I'm sad, Imma work. It's like that's how a lot of us deal with these emotions and these feelings, right? So what would be something that you would tell a creative who is planning to go into motherhood or who's on the journey of in or pregnant or has kids? What would you tell them or what advice would you give them in regards to understanding their feelings and how actually addressing their feelings can help them be better mothers, better creators, better entrepreneurs, better business women?
I think as creatives, like it's natural. Creatives is artistry. And so it's natural that like when you grew up as artists or like painters, like your feelings are your art, your feelings are in your paintings, your feelings are in all of these. I think that's natural for creatives to do. Just be like, oh, well, my work is my feelings. But sometimes we could do that so much that we get lost. And like actually now it's so abstract that we can't even name what the feeling actually is. So I think it's not stopping what you're doing, but taking the time to figure out why you're doing it and what is it doing for you, right? And so like even if like I'll use you as an example as a photographer, you're taking pictures all the time, but like taking a moment to be like, well, what did that actually do for me just now? Right? Like what was that positive feeling that I got? when I was doing these photos? What was that positive feeling that I got when I had this interaction with that client who was probably having a sad day, and then like they took their pictures, now they're confident, they can walk on the moon, they can all do all that. Maybe that was a feeling that happened for you as well. And really like taking the time to be like, now what does that mean? And like holding on to that. My therapist would always say, Brittni, you need to surrender to your feelings. And I'm like, what? Who? What? Surrender? Me? What? But I had to really understand like what that actually meant. Like not letting go of yourself, but like releasing yourself to actually feel the pain, to feel the feeling, because without feeling the actual feeling, you really don't know how you're going to move on. And sometimes you really don't know how to communicate that actual feeling if you don't know what it is. So within your work, take the time to ask yourself, how did that make me feel today? Even if it's 2 minutes. My favorite place to do anything is 2 places: the car when I'm by myself, and the bathroom. In the mirror and behind the wheel. Those are my favorite places to do my reflections, 'cause I have 2 kids, like, I there's not a lot of time where I can do it, but in that creative space, it's, "How did this make me feel? But do I and do I want to feel this feeling again?" Right? I think that's the other part. Like, okay, great. I think that was the part that made it hard for me. Like, okay, great. We surrendered to these feelings. Now I'm depressed for 2 weeks and don't know what to do. Okay, cool. Now that we feel this feeling, we know what it feels like. Do we want to feel this feeling again? If we do, right, what does it take to get to that positive feeling again? What does it take to have that positive feeling or have that feeling happen all the time? It said a study says that we reset our emotions like every 90 seconds. That's a lot. So if I want to remain with positive emotions, what do I actually need to do? I actually one need to name them so I could figure out how to get there again. And then what actually happened? What was my body doing that made me feel like, yes, this is where I need to be. And then the same goes for negative emotions, right? You don't Nobody wants to dwell in them, but we need to understand them. And so sometimes it means surrendering to them for a small amount of time, enough to understand it, to know what to do next. Do I want this feeling anymore? How do I move away from this feeling?
Hmm. I think that's a great point because even like I didn't realize how much work affected me till I couldn't do it, right? And even I didn't have a long maternity leave. I didn't do all those things. And I remember like talking with my husband because he was like, "Why are you going back to work X, Y, and Z?" And when I really sat in it and realized that going to work made me feel confident, knowing that I knew what I was doing behind the camera, and then getting the feedback from the clients of, "Oh, this looks great," or, "This is perfect, blah, blah, blah." It's feeding me, and it's like, now I'm feeling more confident because having a newborn at home, I don't feel confident at all. She's crying, I don't know why she's crying. I feel like I'm doing all these different things, but then going to some place that made me feel confident helped me come back home feeling a little bit more confident going into that stage of, like I wasn't as frantic anymore. And I think, like you said, being able to understand what work makes you feel like and how does it make you feel and how, like, again, like for me, I didn't realize the value that work played until I did not feel confident, until I did not know who I was, and I felt lost in this new title of being a mother now and being a mom. And then it was like, no, who was I before? And work helped me remember who I was before and still put that value on. You're still the same person. You're just evolving into this new role that's not it shouldn't take over completely because you're still who you were before, you know? So what advice would you give to someone who is either going through pregnancy, who is or someone who already has a family that may still be struggling in terms of addressing their feelings while still trying to balance being an entrepreneur and balance this new balance their business as well?
First thing that I will say is it doesn't happen overnight. Like my framework, it to me is an embodiment, but it took me years to even identify. And even when I thought I identified it, it was like actually, no, that's not the right thing. And so now we're here where I feel more confident about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am successful in my own framework every single day, right? Like I mean, it takes time to just deal with yourself, you know? And because you are constantly evolving, guess what? So do your feelings, and so do the way that you deal with your feelings. And so the reason why I am truly like not just confident about the work but passionate about the work is because I know that the framework works. I know that it's something that is going to continue to live on because, like I said, like in the beginning, it was me just tracking a month's time, me just tracking 3 months' time. I don't think that you should be tracking an entire year sometimes, like, because think about your business, right? You have quarters for a reason. There's things that are happening differently in every single quarter. And I think the Go Far framework or the F.A.R method allows you to identify what's also happening within those quarters as well. So I think it's just take the time to know that you're going to need time. You're going to need time to identify who you really are. And I think that just embracing everything as it comes, moment by moment, and not like thinking about. I think my problem in the beginning was like, okay, now I'm a mother. I need to be the best mother. I need to be the best this. I need to be the best this. I need to be best this, even though I had no blueprint on how to do any of it. And so it's just taking the time to know that like it takes time. And who I wanted to be as a mother in 2019, I don't even know who that is, but who I want to be as a mother in 2026 are completely night and day. And so just take time. Take the time that you need. Know that not everybody's time is the same time. It could be 3 days for you, it could be 3 weeks, it could be 3 months, it could be 3 years. And I stand by postpartum being actually longer than a year. I think it's up to 3. Um, I just take the time that you need and know that, like, nobody is doing it perfectly. It's why I created Imperfectly, Brittni, because I know that all of my imperfections are what makes me unique and what makes me perfect to nobody but me and God.
Hmm. Well, that's a great one. Ooh, ooh, that's a good one. Um, well, I would just want to say on behalf of me and Leilani, thank you for being an amazing sister, aunt, doula, mentor, best friend, et cetera.
Lifer.
'Cause lifer, yes, because you have definitely you helped this process. Like I wouldn't have I don't think this process would have been the same if I did not have you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I know everyone, if y'all don't know, y'all should be jealous of me because I have the most amazing sister to go through this process with.
And no, I'm not a doula. No, I don't plan to be.
I was gonna say I don't think she's opening up those services, but if you guys do need a framework or a birth plan, please make sure that you guys reach out to her. We'll put the information in the caption because that birth plan did help me. That birth plan did put in perspective things I never even considered or thought about. And it definitely was something that helped me one identify even for myself when I say this is how I'm really feeling, this is how much pain I'm actually in. And a lot of us, every woman is different. So you do need to find a way to advocate for yourself and to be able to identify, but then also communicate with other individuals, whether even if it's your husband, even if it's your spouse, whoever it may be, that birth plan helps me and it could help you. It could help you, but also just knowing how to identify your feelings in general can help you be a better you, a better wife, a better spouse, a better business person, et cetera, et cetera. So again, Brittany, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for passing on so much wisdom.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for helping me in my process of this crazy journey.
I would
Um,
do it again, only for you, but I would do it again.
I don't think I'm gonna do it again, but good to know. But thank you so much again. Love ya.
You.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone on this journey and that there's so much power in building something beautiful while becoming someone new. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, or share it with another mama or creative who needs the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and lets more stories like ours be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real talk from creative moms like you, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bump and Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and give yourself all the grace that you deserve.